some states even still do have strict law. We've seen in recent years, Utah and now Virginia, I believe, have both passed laws requiring age verification for internet sites, and as a result, they've been blocked from accessing Pornhub. And so those are some of the state crimes. There's federal crimes also that can be included under RICO. Bribery, counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is one that you would not have at the state level. Slavery, another one that's included as a RICO predicate. Murder for hire. Criminal copyright infringement. So if you run a ring of IP thieves, you can potentially be indicted under RICO. And terrorism is one of the more recent additions, I believe, to the RICO predicates list. But ultimately, the predicates have to be related to each other and to the organization. So you have to have the rule is under the law, same or similar purposes, results, participants, victims, or methods of commission. So if they're related crimes, you can potentially prosecute them under RICO. And why do you want to prosecute it under RICO? Well, that's because you get 20 years per count. So for every RICO predicate that you're charged with, it's 20 years, regardless of whether the punishment for the underlying crime is much less. So you think about a crime like robbery that might have a punishment of up to 20 years, but is far more frequently charged or far more frequently sentenced in the 3 to 5 year range, unless it's a violent armed robbery. You can now charge 20 years for every individual count of robbery. And $250,000 fine per count also, plus asset forfeiture, right? So you've got civil asset forfeiture of any ill-gotten gains. What sets RICO apart from other criminal laws like it? There's civil enforcement of RICO. So you can sue someone, you can sue an organization under RICO. Typically, what you will find is a fraud allegation will be brought under RICO. And you can civilly sue for damages related to the criminal enterprise. And in fact, I worked at a company that was sued along with some of its customers, alleging a RICO conspiracy. And that suit was very quickly dismissed. It was trumped up nonsense, but it was interesting to get that in the mail and get the service of process and have it say, oh, you're being sued for a violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. And I'm like, holy shit, where am I working?
That's like what is it they call it? Lawfare? Is that what it is? Where they, somebody will just, like they may not even been like injured or damaged or what, but then they sue you anyway.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, typically lack of standing is what they call that. If you're suing someone and you don't have an actual injury related to that, you have lack of standing to sue because you're required to have been damaged in order to recover.
Okay.
But usually you can figure out a way to allege some damages. And in this case, they did. They figured out a way to allege some damages. The problem was identifying the criminal conspiracy, right? You have to prove the underlying fraud. And fraud, notoriously difficult to prove, by the way. Not that there was any going on here, but at the same time, very, very difficult to prove fraud. That's why you don't see a whole lot of fraud convictions outside of the big, flashy ones. Really difficult because you have to show intent. And it's very easy for somebody like, Elizabeth Holmes, for example, to get up there and say, hey, I did not intend to defraud these investors. It was inadvertent. I was talking about my vision for the company. It wasn't an intent to steal their money. I was talking about a future state that I thought I could achieve. And all of a sudden now it's not fraud, right? Because you don't have the intent to deceive. You believed what you were saying. It's the George Costanza, right? If you believe it, it's not a lie. So Yeah, notoriously difficult to get fraud. So a couple famous RICO cases I just wanted to mention before we move on here. Hell's Angels were charged under RICO back in the 70s for guns and drugs. That one failed. They could not get a conviction. They charged the Key West Police Department with RICO, and they were successful in this one. So they were running a protection racket for illegal cocaine smugglers, and this is one we'll talk about in the the lesser known organized crime later this season. But yeah, the Key West Police Department. Look that up if you get a chance. That's a fun one to read about. Major League Baseball sued under RICO. This is a civil enforcement action. The league essentially, in a secret ballot, voted to contract the league. And one of the things they were doing was eliminating the Twins and the Expos. So I don't know if you remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the Expos moved from Montreal to Washington. They became the Nationals.
Oh.
But the reason that happened is because Major League Baseball wanted to eliminate the Minnesota Twins and the Montreal Expos from the league. They wanted to contract two teams out of the league. They were sued by the owner of the Expos for fraud and conspiracy. The idea being that they were engaged in an action to devalue the team and make it essentially impossible for him to realize the value of his asset. And if they had contracted the league, that absolutely would have happened, right? He would not have been able to sell the team for anywhere near the value of the team. And that case lasted 2 years. Eventually, Major League Baseball prevailed. They were not found guilty or liable under RICO. And then probably the most famous RICO case ever is the Gambino crime family. John Gotti, the Teflon Don, was eventually convicted under RICO after dodging crime after crime after crime, being found not guilty over and over and over again. Federal prosecutors managed to get him on RICO charges for his mafia activity, gambling, racketeering, murder for hire, et cetera, et cetera. And it was eventually sentenced to life in prison for his RICO predicates. And he died in jail. So,
yo, I lost you, man.
Oh, you did?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh, man, again?
Yeah, you like just blocked out like there until just now.
How long did you lose me for?
Maybe about 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. All right. That's weird. I don't know what's going on. Super weird. But I was talking about, I'll go back and fix this one. Let me flag it here. I'll go back and fix this. And I was just talking about Gotti and how he got away with everything right up until he didn't. And he got life in prison and died there. So.
No. Do you think that because there's this book that called 3 Felonies a Day, and it has to do with how, somebody who's just like a regular working guy, or, maybe they unintentionally or inadvertently, because there's so many laws that you can be prosecuted under, commit 3 felonies a day. It's a book by Harvey Silverglate.
Oh, I've never heard of that book, but I have heard of the concept, right? Of how we're essentially all walking around compromised, right? Because there's so many laws, and the laws are so complicated, and some of us, you've inadvertently committed tax fraud, or you've inadvertently violated some sort of law that you didn't even know existed, that hasn't been prosecuted in 40 years or whatever. Yeah. But if they need to get you on something, they can trump that sort of thing up.
Yeah, exactly. So if you fall under that eye of Sauron, then good luck, basically.
Right, exactly. And I look at RICO. I've always sort of seen RICO as one of the more sort of positive laws that around this area. And the reason I say that is, it's been misused over time, but it is still relatively difficult to make a RICO case, relatively difficult to get a conviction in a RICO case. But I see it as the ability to punish the truly bad actors in a much more severe way than an individual, right? If you go out rather than, make one extortion charge punishable by 20 years in prison, because you threatened a guy and extorted some money from him. one time or a couple times. Rather than make that punishable by 20 years in prison, what they've done is they've said, okay, if you do that as an individual, you're going to get a couple years. But if you run a criminal enterprise that does that, and that's how you make your income, we're going to throw the book at you because we're not going to allow criminal enterprise. And so I've always sort of seen RICO as a very positive thing for individuals versus corrupt organizations. But that's just how I feel about it.
The only laws that there should be on the books are any laws of violence where you're attacking somebody, or I don't know. It just seems like it's so overly complicated, right? So,
it is, right? There's no reason for the United States Code to take up an entire wall in a library, right? It's crazy.
The Constitution is only however many pages. What does that say? But like the laws to implement it are like what, thousands?
Yeah, you can fit that little paper copy of the Constitution in your breast pocket, right? But you can't even take one section of the U.S. Code in your backpack, or else it'd be like a Marine humping it up the mountain or whatever.
Yeah, good luck, right? Yeah.
So, all right. So that's RICO. So let's get back to the episode. So when we leave Ava and Raylan and Vasquez and Rachel, we get Boyd and the boys, and they're discussing a plan to break into the vault. They've identified that, hey, there's they need to get into Pizza Portal because they think that's where the money is. Ava correctly identified that it used to be a bank at the end of the last episode, and that they think that they're pretty sure that the money's hidden in the vault in the basement in that former bank building. And they need to go get some recon. They need to check it out and see what's going on. But while they're there discussing that, they get a visit from Ty Walker. And he's got a message for them, and it is to abandon their efforts. And I have a little clip of that.
When you robbed that bank the other day, that was a solid piece of tradecraft. But I don't come to blow your skirts up. What geniuses you all are. My point is, somewhere along the way, you got the idea you were taking money from that sad sack Calhoun, which frankly wouldn't bother me a bit. But that's not the actual fact. As it happens, you robbed the man I work for. And while my employer is fair and patient on the whole, he's no weak sister, nor a man to be trifled with. Say he functions at a different level than maybe you're used to.
I don't know, Skippy. We're used to a whole lot around here.
Carl? I'm just a weather vane, Mr. Crowder. I don't make the wind blow. I'm saying you find a way to counsel patience. Desist from coming after what doesn't belong to you, and everybody wins. Town, county, and state. Now, that being said, you insist upon the track thus far set upon, there will be consequences.
You done? Damn, son, you like talk as much as I do. Well, Mr. What was your name?
Walker.
Mr. Walker. Well, maybe I did the things you think I did, or maybe I didn't. Either way, I don't give a shit about you or the fella you work for. Now, many a men have come through that door ringing a similar bell. Most of those men are dead now, one way or another.
Well, I certainly got no desire to end up like all those other men. As I said...
You're just a weather vane. I heard you. Now, you come here, said what you needed to say, and interrupted my repast in the process. Now, if I couldn't finish my hamburger in peace, I'm damn sure gonna finish my French fries that way. Carl?
You best get to walking, Mr. Walker. You and your beard.
For your hospitality. Hope you boys enjoy the rest of your day.
So that's, Walker giving them a warning, and Boyd kicking him out unceremoniously because he's unhappy after his bacchanal the evening before. And that's, of course, our word of the week. I was going to use repast, but I liked bacchanal so much better.
You use your tongue prettier than a $20 whore.
Bacchanal is an occasion of wild and drunken revelry, which is absolutely what he and Ava engaged in the night before. It's named after Bacchus, the god of wine and giver of ecstasy. So not actual ecstasy tablets, but the feeling of ecstasy. That god is